Welcome to the Evolving Past Alzheimer's podcast, where we are focused on bringing you information to help prevent from developing and improve from suffering with brain diseases like Alzheimer's and other dementias. I'm Dr. Nate Bergman, a physician and Chief Scientific Wellness Officer at Kemper Cognitive Wellness, and I'll be your guide on these sound waves. So whether you're a baby boomer who's worried that your brain wiring just isn't working like it once was, or you have a loved one with the disease, or you yourself have already been diagnosed and are wondering, what do I do now? You'll want to listen to this podcast. Each episode, we introduce you to the top doers and thinkers that are revisioning Alzheimer's, dementia, and just generally things in life's second half. If you have questions or comments, check us out on social media. To support us, go to patreon.com/evolvingpast and consider hitting the button and becoming a patron of this show if you find these episodes valuable. That's Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/evolvingpast. So here we go. Let's get better. Welcome back. One of the messages we are really trying to get out to people is that there is something you can do about Alzheimer's, and that the earlier you do something about it, the more likely you are to see improvement. It's a really exciting time to be in this space. And to quote Dr. Dale Bredesen, and I agree, we are at the dawn of the age of treatable neurodegenerative diseases. It's early days. It's like early days of cancer, early days of treating HIV. The tools are somewhat crude, but they work from time to time, and they're starting to work more and more. And I'm trying to get our staff to understand and our people to understand that when people follow the recommendations, typically they should get better. Life should improve. Now, they might not have the full reversal that you hear being hyped, but improvements we should expect, some mild. And, in my view, the analogy with Alzheimer's is really like stages of cancer. In other words, if someone's already to the point where they've lost independence, they can't pay bills, they can't take medication, phone's hard to use, unsafe driving. I mean, that's a whole lot of loss. That's like a stage 4 cancer, certainly if it's more advanced than that. It's not that we can't do something for those folks. Absolutely. Those people usually improve a little bit. Life is better. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But if we get it early, like we do surveillance for breast cancer or prostate cancer or colon cancer, if we get it early, that's where you can really see these sort of remarkable improvements. So I want to illustrate this idea with 3 real-life examples. Names, ages, and non-critical details have been altered to protect the identity of these folks. But one case is mild, one case is moderate, and one case is severe. But all 3 of these folks had improvements relative to the condition they came in with, right? I want to start with the most severe. This woman's name was Juanita. She had something called primary progressive aphasia. The family thought she had Alzheimer's. This is also it's much less common than Alzheimer's, but no less of a frightening neurodegenerative condition. So this was a case where there's a strong family history. She had multiple generations, a sibling, parent with related dementias. And this woman was in her 70s. She had already lost a lot of independence, couldn't drive anymore, couldn't cook, couldn't do the laundry. And she was so anxious and so impaired and so demented that she really couldn't have meaningful interaction with her family anymore. So this is like the stage 4 cancer type of analogy. Again, I don't mean to be morbid, but it's just further along. And in terms of outcomes, you'll see people improving. You will. Life improving in many ways. But we don't typically see the astonishing full reversals. Now, there are exceptions, absolutely. In fact, I just heard about a lady whose cognitive test scores went from 4 out of 30 to 19 out of 30 in about 6 months. 4 out of 30, again, you have to ask questions about how they actually are doing in their life. But that's, nursing home level of care, can't get dressed without confusion. To someone who's still 19, improving by 15 points, 19, still someone who's quite profoundly impaired, but kind of depending on how they're doing with their life skills, they may be able to really live a pretty good quality of life still at home. So if anyone's out there is seeing as a rule these very, very profoundly impaired people getting so much better, or they're guaranteeing that these people have reversals, let me know, because I would love to learn from those people. I will make it my business to learn from those people. Anyways, here is Juanita's story as told by her son. She said, my grandmother suffered with Alzheimer's for 14 years before her passing, what they were calling Alzheimer's. My mother had been showing signs for about a year. We felt defeated by the lack of progress traditional medicine has made over the past 2 decades since my grandmother passed. In many ways, we were being told to prepare to live through the same hell all over again. Kemper's very personal, holistic, and optimistic approach to our family and the disease is a blessing. We have not only experienced a pause in Mom's symptoms, but are enjoying marked improvements in her engagement, happiness, and overall well-being. And I will add to that, the family tells me that she wasn't able to cook or do laundry anymore. Now she can follow some recipes. She can do a little bit of laundry, a little bit of sweeping, which makes her happy. She is most importantly meaningfully interacting with her family on a much more regular basis. And everybody is lit up by that. She is less anxious, and it goes on and on. I know this sounds like an advertisement, but I really can no longer suffer critics that question this approach as pseudoscientific. I understand where they're coming from, but we cannot blind ourselves to these kinds of results, which are not at all unusual or uncommon. What we think we see, like I always say, is Richard Isaacson, who was a guest on the show a couple months ago, he published a paper at the end of last year showing about 60% of people improved when they followed most of the recommendations. And when I ask my colleagues around, we think about our own results, probably about 2/3, it sounds about right, probably about 2/3 of people have some measure of improvement, right, relative to the condition they came in with. So, friends, we have to begin to change the conversation about this, not to sensationalize it, saying, what 3 pills do I need to take so that I go from nursing home level care to completely better, like I'm 35 years old again. But we do we do see that improvement's possible. And the families here are putting in a lot. They're working. They're getting tested with tests that insurance aren't covered by. They're doing therapies that aren't necessarily covered by insurance. But people are making improvements, and this is so exciting. Second case I want to share with you guys is Barb. This is a woman who basically has what's called amnestic mild cognitive impairment, or very early Alzheimer's. People know me well know that I get up on a soapbox about the so-called mild cognitive impairment. Mild cognitive impairment is a profound amount of brain damage, a catastrophic amount of brain damage, if you're getting tested in the amnestic or mild cognitive impairment range. This is almost like kind of the stage 3/4 cancer. It's advanced. So listen to this story. This was a report we received from a family member of Barb, her daughter. This was a lady I had seen a few years back when I was still working at the Cleveland Clinic. And when I transitioned to my work here at Kemper Cognitive Wellness, we had seeing her for a little while, and then her family just brought her back a few months ago. So her story is told by her daughter is that my mother was having many serious red flag memory issues on a daily basis. She has 2 copies of the Alzheimer's gene, the ApoE4 gene, and we were very concerned that Alzheimer's disease would be the inevitable outcome. This woman has a strong family history. We aggressively worked on treating as many contributors as possible, and now she has very few red flag memory issues, and we are so thrilled. We want to keep her healthy as long as possible. So after several months of her getting treated, Mom is no longer repeating stories. Also, her husband stated that Barb is not misplacing things like she used to and asking where they are. So Barb's husband, was a bit concerned about the cost of labs up front. But once they talked about it with their daughter and their family and had seen these improvements, he agreed the cost was worth it. He also shared that his wife has 2 sisters living in a nursing home with dementia. They share a room, but neither recognizes the other. That was just shared, which was, so you see here, this is how it's supposed to go, guys. I'll just share with you this last case real quickly on it. Jane's in her late 50s. This is the so-called mild case, right? But make no mistake about it. There is major brain changes happening. Major. But this is the reversible kind. This is the exciting kind, right? And for everyone out there that's listening, you may be in your mid 30s, especially if you're in your mid 40s or older, see if you recognize yourself in here, right? So this woman, when I first meet her, we always talk about goals. She tells me her goals are that she wants to be fully functioning and not feeling like she's going to be in a nursing home in 3 years. Her mother passed away of Alzheimer's in a nursing home. She's had memory and thinking problems 6 years ago. She started having them. More typical symptoms are attending to details, organizing emails, moving multiple parts. She gets flustered. She feels like she's treading water. She's losing words. She's worse with names. The worst was an episode a few years ago while running, having run the same path for several years. She gets to the point when she comes to a fork in the path and had to stop for several seconds to figure out which way to go. Now she's occasionally forgetting where she's going when she's on the road. She's showing up for appointments on the wrong days, and she tells me she feels dumb a lot. She feels dumb a lot. She's showing up for appointments on the wrong day and getting lost on the road. Friends, this is brain damage. This is brain damage. We cannot ignore this. This is not something that's going to just get better by itself. You're not just getting older. So we tested her, and she has a copy of the ApoE4 gene, that high-risk Alzheimer's gene. She had neuropsychologic test results. You can listen to the previous episode with Dr. Kristen Locken about the value of neuropsychologic testing. There's a lot of value. And her test results were very concerning and showed impairment. Of course, it's not huge impairment, but it was very concerning. The areas in which she tested abnormal for were consistent with what we call preclinical or prodromal Alzheimer's disease. Like, it's the beginning of Alzheimer's. This is basically when the changes are happening. And it's the time to do something. So here's the fun part. 3 months later, see her in the office 3 months later. She tells me I see her. She says she's doing well. She says her words are big improvements, more energy, more cognitive improvement, able to focus, get more stuff done. And of course, she's not getting lost anymore. I mean, my dear listeners, this was a woman who was generally healthy her whole life, except some stomach aches and maybe some constipation as a younger person that she managed with magnesium. Oh, and by the way, she had attention issues her whole life, like ADD. We know that attention issues increases your chance of getting Alzheimer's by like 6-fold in some studies, 6 times higher chance. She had trouble sleeping since she went into menopause. And remember the story. She's in her late 50s. It was 6 years ago she started having symptoms. Now she started a medication for sleep. Her main medical problem was menopause. Are you kidding me? When we say Alzheimer's is a disease of aging, what are we talking about? Menopause was her trigger. I've seen this. We published a case on this. We're trying to get Dr. Roberta Brinton on to talk about the critical window hypothesis for women and estrogen vis-a-vis Alzheimer's. Hormone replacement is what is helping this lady. That and meditation and better sleep, of course, diet and exercise, but she was doing pretty well on that already before she came to see us. She's doing amazingly. 3 months, right? So when Dr. Richard Isaacson says that Alzheimer's isn't so much a neurodegenerative disease as it is a medical problem, this is what he's talking about, at least in part. This is what he's talking about. So these are 3 different cases. There are a lot of things to take away from these, but most importantly, I think there are 2 things. One is that don't ignore early symptoms. And the second is that you can improve. So the amazing, amazing news is that you can improve. There's so much to do, and you can get so much better. There's so many things we can tap into to drive wellness. So I want to take a minute to pay respect to the many around the world whose lives have been taken by coronavirus. But in particular, I want to mourn the loss of Martha Claire Morris, who actually did not pass COVID-19, but rather from cancer recently. Dr. Martha gave birth to the MIND diet and was a giant in nutritional neuroscience, and her loss will be felt by our community. God bless everyone. Talk to you soon. So that's our episode. I hope it was useful to you. Check out the show notes on iTunes or on our website where we've summarized the key points. If you find the information here valuable, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on iTunes and leaving comments in the comments section. It will really help us bring this message to as many people as we can. If you have questions or comments, connect with us on social media. Finally, To support us, go to patreon.com/evolvingpast and consider hitting the button and becoming a patron of this show. That's Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/evolvingpast. Thanks, and talk to you next time.